Hi everyone, my name is Evie. Welcome back to this video. This is kind of like a video based on like things I wish I knew before I went to Melbourne Grand Prix. So kind of questions that I had before going to Melbourne Grand Prix, because this year was my first ever year going to Melbourne Grand Prix, let alone just a Grand Prix in general, and I had a lot of questions that I never really got answered. One of the questions that I want to address is whether you should get GA or Grandstand. Like I said, I've never experienced what GA access is like at a Grand Prix because this is my first Grand Prix and I got Grandstand. But I know a couple of friends that had GA, and I knew a couple of friends that went last year with GA. Sprint races, F3 and F2 sprint races are around 20 laps, and then the actual Grand Prix races are like 50. I personally wouldn't like to be standing up for 50 laps. I would definitely recommend Grandstand. I would definitely either recommend Fangio or Props where I was sitting. I can't really account for any of the other grandstands. Also, on grandstands and stuff like that, if there's one thing that I literally cannot stress to you enough, how important sunscreen is. I left my sunscreen at home, and I was really lucky because I had a sunscreen bar kind of just outside the entrance to my grandstand. I was reapplying that every single hour. I really underestimated how sunny it was going to be. The sun was literally shining on you. For qualifying and races, it is at 3 p.m. or it is like during midday. So that's when the sun is at its like peak. And if there's one thing you shouldn't mess with, it's the Australian sun. And I got so burnt. Another thing I would recommend is lip balm. Your lips get so chapped. With the cold weather, the wind, the sun, your lips get so chapped. It's so uncomfortable. You get really bad wind burn. I know at Melbourne Walk, I was just constantly licking my lips because of how much they stung. You do have your hats, obviously, of the team that you support, but they only cover half your face, and when I say that literally half of your face can get sunburned, I genuinely mean that. So sunscreen is very important if you are sitting in the stands. Alright, this one is what hotel to stay at and also transport. One thing about Melbourne is that it's good to get in and book your accommodation early because they will rise those prices up so much that it's eye-watering. The trams and transports and stuff like that, they do have free trams running express from wherever you are. For me, it was Little Burke Street, to gates 1, 2, 3, whatever. When you are leaving the Grand Prix, it is very hectic with public transport. I think some people were reporting waiting there for 2 hours to get out of the actual park because of trams and stuff like that. This is my tip for you, and it worked out amazing for us. I think we cut the time that it would have waited for a tram in half. When you are leaving through gate 1, for example, there's 2 ways that you can go. You can either go to trams or you can go to shuttle buses or rideshare. Go to shuttle buses or rideshare and take the shuttle bus. I cannot recommend to you enough that that is what you have to do. It is so much quicker. We took the shuttle bus to the Crown, and then from the Crown we walked to Flinders, and then we took a tram from Flinders back to our hotel, and we cut the time in half. Next question I had was food and prices and merch. I will not lie to you, it's very expensive. I think the one time that I ate food, it was sushi, it was like $23. So the food is quite expensive, but one really good thing about AusGP is they allow you to take food into the tracks. So I remember one day my friend bought Pringles, chips, M&Ms, stuff like that in just like a Coles bag, and then we were allowed to walk in with it, and then we kind of just sat in the grandstand all day and ate it, and it was so much better than like going and like also waiting in the lines for food. The lines literally like went across the track. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend buying food in there. Just buying like bread and stuff like that and eating it at the track. Like there's just a bunch of alternatives that you could do to make it cheaper. If we're buying merch, I wouldn't recommend it. Merch is so insanely overpriced. I remember one day I tried to go in and buy a Mercedes windbreaker. It was $350. Definitely get your merch before the Grand Prix online. You can get that at F1 store or any of your favorite teams. They have their own independent stores. Okay, this is about the fan forum stage because this was one of the things that I had genuinely no idea about. In terms of what time to get there, it is like a first and best dress thing. So if you do want to get like front row for your favorite drivers, I would definitely get there early, around 7 a.m. We didn't get there early for fan forum. I do know that McLaren was at 9:50, I want to say, and we got there at around 9. We got actually a pretty good view for what it's worth. So you don't necessarily have to get there early, you don't necessarily have to get there really last minute. Just go in the middle and you should be fine. But it is a little bit hustle and bustle in there, that's my only thing. Best way to meet the drivers. A big issue with this year was people camping outside drivers' hotels. And when I tell you to not do that, do not do it. I do know that they actually started taking side entries and side exits to avoid talking to fans, which is something that you never really want to see. There was a couple of drivers that did meet and greets and appearances this year, which was really good because it gave the fans that want to meet the drivers, let's say organically, an opportunity to meet them. So for me, who was very uncomfortable with like people camping outside hotels, I was able to meet two of my favorite drivers because of meet and greets, and that was amazing, and I had the best time ever. The two Williams boys, they did meet and greets, and Oscar did a meet and greet, and then Lando and George both did appearances in Tommy Hilfiger and Culture Kings. The other way to meet the drivers is if you run into them on the street. Like a lot of them were doing runs in the morning. I do know that when I went for my run around Melbourne, I was definitely keeping an eye out for drivers. You catch them like doing like just normal tourist things. Like, you know, at the end of the day, they're real people. They just want to go experience Australia. So yeah, that's the best way to meet drivers. Or you can meet them at Melbourne Walk. This is probably the most asked question I had from my experience at Melbourne, because I was front row at Melbourne Walk and a lot of people want to be front row at Melbourne Walk. I'm going to be honest, Melbourne Walk is very, very overwhelming and you are up early to get there. So I'll start from the start and I'll end at the end, but there's a lot of explanation to this and it is a lot. And I will say that Melbourne Walk is not for the faint-hearted. It is genuinely like going into war. We only went on the Thursday. It's open on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I do know that this year it was actually quite popular in the afternoons. And a lot of the drivers that didn't walk in the morning walked in the afternoons. So I would definitely recommend going on the Thursday because there is no on-track there is the Porsche Carrera Cup and stuff like that, but there is no like race cars on track. So I would definitely recommend going on the Thursday because you can go home early, sleep, and then go explore Melbourne. I was really lucky in a sense that I had a friend who had a car who was able to drive us and park because she had a parking permit. I got up at around 3:15 a.m. and then we got there at around 4 a.m. Do you need to get there at 4 a.m.? Not necessarily. We were just really nervous with the amount of popularity that there was this year, that people were going to get there around that time. There was definitely a lot of people there at 4 a.m. We were like third in line at our gate. And when the first tram came, so many people got off. So many people. So I would definitely not recommend waiting for the first tram. If you want to get front row, I would not recommend waiting for the first tram. I would go earlier because there are a lot of people that get off on that first tram. It is freezing. Melbourne is freezing at 4 a.m. in the morning. I would pack layers. This year you could only take the overpass, which is a bunch of stairs going up. You run across, then you go down the stairs, and then you run to Melbourne Walk. So I would say at around like 8 a.m. I'll insert pictures here, but it did start to get a little bit more busy, a little bit more like hustle bustle. The news crews came around. I got on the news. We saw Kim Millman took a bunch of photos. It hit 10:30, so when gates open. And it was crazy. I have never been in an experience like that before. I was so nervous. So when they let everyone through, it was like everyone scanned it and sprinted. One thing about Melbourne Walk I will say, no matter what time you get there, you have to be a fast runner. If you're not a fast runner and you know you're not a fast runner, I honestly would not bother trying to get front row. When you're inside of Melbourne Walk, it is very squishy. You get squished. I remember the next day I woke up with bruises on my ribs because of how squished I was getting against the metal barricade. There was a grown man behind me that was resting his camera on my head, and then there was also a teenage boy who was literally leaning on me, like putting his arm on my shoulder. I would say that if you have claustrophobia or you have anxiety or anything like that, I do not recommend Melbourne Walk. Do not do it, please. For your own safety, do not do Melbourne Walk. That aside, what is it like to front row at Melbourne Walk? You get a lot of photos taken of you. I was in a McLaren video, which is crazy because I'm the biggest McLaren fan. I was in a McLaren video. I got interviewed by F2, I got interviewed by F1, I got interviewed by ABC. You get a lot of photos taken of you. So if you don't want people to know that you're front row at Melbourne Walk, probably don't go front row at Melbourne Walk, because I was in the background of Lewis's photo, of Oscar's photo, of Pierre's photo. Like, everyone pretty much knows that I'm a huge F1 fan now. So bring Sharpies. They rely on you to have Sharpies. Also, it's cool because like you can bring a Sharpie home and be like, Lena Norris, touch my Sharpie, because I have a Sharpie that Lena Norris took. What did I bring to Melbourne Walk? I brought a bunch of caps, my George Russell merch. Definitely for next year, I'm going to print out like driver cards. There is a lot of drivers that I didn't have merch for. Lewis Hamilton walked straight past me and I did not get a signature. Like, oh, that is insane. Bought this McLaren hat to meet Oscar Piastri at his meet and greet, but I also got Zach Brown's signature on it as well, and I got a photo with Zach Brown. I bought this to go to the Alex Albon meet and greet, got Alex Albon's signature. I also got Logan Sargent's signature at Melbourne Walk, and I got reserve driver Luke Browning's signature at Melbourne Walk as well. My Lando hat, I got Oscar's signature again, and then I got Lando's signature on my Silverstone merch, which I am so... I can't believe that Lando Norris was in front of me. He wasn't taking any photos, he didn't really talk to anyone, so that was a bit disappointing, but like, it is insane to think that that is Lando Norris' signature. I also got George Russell's merch signed. Right, my last thing that I wanted to quickly touch on is dress code, because this is another thing that I didn't really understand what Melbourne Grand Prix was about. Whether I was wearing merch or whether I was actually dressing up because it's a Grand Prix. I do wish that for one of the days I wore like fancy clothing, because it would have been like really cool to wear like just like a top and jeans and then like my Oscar hat or my Lando hat. But for most of the days, I did wear my McLaren merch. I wanted to wear McLaren merch. I wanted everyone to know that I was a McLaren fan. But Melbourne was such an amazing experience. And it definitely kind of filled me with a little bit of confidence for next year, because I know what I'm kind of like doing now. I didn't really have any idea what I was doing this year. If you have any more questions, please let me know and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Singapore is next.